Wovoka, circa 1856 to 1932. Wovoka, whose name was Quetzalcoatl, was born circa 1856 in the Smith Valley, southeast of Carson City, Nevada. A Northern Paiute spiritual leader, he spent his youth in rancher David Wilson's household, where he learned Christian teachings that later informed his message. After a visionary experience during the solar eclipse of January 1st, 1889, Wovoka proclaimed the dead would be restored and non-native institutions removed if native peoples lived righteously and performed the ghost dance. His message blended indigenous beliefs with Christian themes of resurrection and moral reform, emphasizing non-violence. The movement spread to the Lakota. Divergent interpretations helped precipitate the 1890 Wounded Knee Massacre. Disheartened by that violence, Wovoka remained in Nevada, living modestly as a medicine man. He remained a recognized native leader and occasionally visited reservations, though he did not travel east to lead the movement. He died in Yerington on September 20th, 1932, and is buried in Schertz, Nevada. Chief White Eagle, circa 1825. February 3, 1914. Chief White Eagle, born circa 1825 near the confluence of the Niobrara and Missouri rivers, served as the hereditary chief of the Ponca from 1870 to 1904. His leadership was defined by resistance to the unlawful 1877 Ponca Trail of Tears, a forced removal that cost hundreds of lives and devastated Ponca families. In November 1877, he led a delegation to Washington, marshaling public opinion through journalists and reformers. This advocacy helped precipitate the 1879 Standing Bear decision and shifts in federal removal policy. White Eagle negotiated monetary reparations in 1881, yet remained a vocal opponent of the Dawes Act and allotment, warning it would pluck the Indian like a bird. He later leased reservation land to the Miller 101 Ranch and engaged with oil interests. In 1904, he abdicated in favor of his son, Horse Chief Eagle. White Eagle died on February 3, 1914, and is interred on Monument Hill in Noble County, Oklahoma. Spotted Tail, circa 1833 to August 5, 1881. Spotted Tail, born about 1833 at Fort Laramie in present-day Wyoming, was a Brule Lakota leader who briefly led the Oglala. Not of a ruling family, he won chieftainship through warrior prowess. In 1855, he surrendered with 2 companions to U.S. authorities to prevent punitive reprisals after an attack on soldiers. Imprisoned 2 years, he returned as a tribal hero. Politically moderate, he favored accommodation with settlers. In 1865, he supported passage of prospectors, and in 1868 signed a treaty confining his people to a South Dakota reservation while conceding a railroad right-of-way. After gold was found in the Black Hills, he attempted to sell mineral rights, reportedly asking $60 million. But federal officials allowed miners access without compensation. Rejecting armed resistance, he kept his followers out of the 1876 campaigns, including Little Bighorn, and helped persuade Crazy Horse to surrender in 1877. He assumed Oglala leadership in 1881 and was assassinated on August 5, 1881, at Rosebud. Harjo Chitto, circa 1846 to April 5, 1912. Chitto Harjo, known as Crazy Snake, and born circa 1846 in the Muskogee Creek Nation in Indian Territory, was a leading orator and conservative head of Creek traditionalists who opposed the federal dismantling of tribal government. Loyal to the Union during the Civil War, he later emerged as a principal voice in the Four Mothers Society, which sought restoration of the 1867 Creek Constitution and protection of communal lands. From about 1900, Harjo organized sustained resistance to the Dawes Commission and allotment, establishing a rival Creek Council and a light horse police force to defend treaty rights. He testified before a Senate committee in 1906 and continued legal and grassroots advocacy as Oklahoma approached statehood. In March 1909, his followers were involved in the episode known as the Crazy Snake Rebellion after violent clashes with local posses. Harjo escaped capture and took refuge in the Choctaw Nation. He died on April 5, 1912, in southeastern Oklahoma, and is remembered for his determined defense of Creek sovereignty. Rain in the Face, circa 1835 to 1905. Rain in the Face, born around 1835 in the Dakota Territory near the forks of the Cheyenne River, was a Hunkpapa Lakota warrior remembered for his role in the Great Sioux War. His name originated in youth, first from a fight in which his face was splattered with blood, like rain, and later reinforced in a rain-soaked battle with the Gros Ventre. He first fought U.S. forces in 1866 at Fort Totten, and in 1868 he joined the Fetterman fight near Fort Phil Kearny. In 1873, he ambushed Dr. John Honsinger and others, leading to his arrest by Captain Thomas Custer in 1874. After escaping custody, he fled west and in 1876 joined Sitting Bull's camp, fighting at the Battle of the Little Bighorn. Legend held that he killed or mutilated the Custer brothers, though he denied this later in life. Rain in the Face surrendered in 1880, settled at Standing Rock, and died in 1905 at Bullhead Station after a long illness. Naiche, circa 1857 to 1919. Naiche, born around 1857, was the youngest son of the renowned Apache leader Cochise and grandson of the Warm Springs chief Mangus Coloradas. His name, often translated as Mischief Maker, reflected a spirited youth, but as a man he was remembered for his dignity, stature, and artistic talent. Following the death of his elder brother Taza in 1876, Naiche inherited the position of hereditary chief of the Chiricahua Apache. In the 1880s, he fought alongside Geronimo in resistance to forced removal to the San Carlos Reservation. After years of conflict and pursuit across the U.S.-Mexico border, Naiche and Geronimo surrendered to General Nelson Miles in 1886, marking the end of major Apache armed resistance. Although denied return to Arizona, Naiche resettled with his band first at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and later at Mescalero, New Mexico. Beyond leadership, he was admired as a skilled painter and craftsman. Naiche died of influenza in Mescalero in 1919. Black Kettle, circa 1803 to November 27, 1868. Black Kettle, born around 1803 in present-day South Dakota, rose to prominence as a chief of the Southern Cheyenne and a member of the Council of 44. Known as a pragmatist, he believed that armed resistance to U.S. expansion was futile and consistently pursued peace despite repeated betrayals. In 1861, he signed the Treaty of Fort Wise, surrendering large Cheyenne lands in hopes of protection. 3 years later, he survived the Sand Creek Massacre, where U.S. troops slaughtered more than 150 of his people, despite his displaying both a U.S. and a white flag above his lodge. Afterward, he continued to advocate for peace, signing further treaties at Little Arkansas in 1865 and Medicine Lodge in 1867, though these again stripped his people of land and security. On November 27, 1868, Black Kettle and his wife were killed by Custer's 7th Cavalry at the Battle of the Washita River. Today, he is remembered as a steadfast peacemaker. Touch the Clouds, circa 1838, September 5, 1905. Touch the Clouds was a chief of the Minneconjou Teton Lakota, noted for his stature, martial skill, and diplomatic counsel. The youngest son of Lone Horn and brother of Spotted Elk, Frog, and Roman Nose, he assumed leadership of the Wakpokanyan Band in 1875. During the Great Sioux War of 1876–77, he led his people through crisis, moving north after Little Bighorn and surrendering at the Spotted Tail Agency in April 1877. He enlisted as first sergeant in the Indian Scouts and was present at Crazy Horse's death. Returning to the Cheyenne River Agency in 1878, he became a shirt wearer in 1882 and a Minneconjou spokesman who advocated education and stability. He represented his people in Washington, appeared at the 1898 Exposition, and remained a leader until his son Amos Charging First succeeded him, continuing the line of Minneconjou headmen tracing back to Lone Horn. He died on September 5, 1905, at Cherry Creek, South Dakota. Dewey Beard, circa 1858–1955. Dewey Beard, also known as Wasu Maza or Iron Hail, was born in 1858 and was a Minneconjou Lakota who fought at the Battle of Little Bighorn as a teenager. He followed Sitting Bull into exile in Canada and later returned to the Cheyenne River Reservation. In 1890, he joined the Ghost Dance and traveled with Spotted Elk's band to Pine Ridge. At Wounded Knee, he was shot 3 times and lost close family members. Surviving the massacre, he converted to Roman Catholicism, spent years performing with Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, and appeared in the 1914 film, The Indian Wars Refought. After his family lost land to military seizure in the 1940s, Dewey Beard died in 1955 at about age 96, remembered as the last known Lakota survivor of both Little Bighorn and Wounded Knee, and a witness to those pivotal events and storyteller. Crowfoot, circa 1830 to April 25, 1890. Crowfoot was born circa 1830 among the Kainai, part of the Blackfoot Confederacy on the Northern Plains, and rose to prominence as a Siksika chief renowned for his prowess in battle and his commitment to peace. During a career of many engagements, he earned respect as a warrior favoring negotiation, working to stabilize relations with traders, the Hudson's Bay Company, and Northwest Mounted Police. He played a central role in Treaty No. 7, acted to restrain raiding when it threatened wider conflict, and notably escorted a Hudson's Bay Company caravan to safety in 1866. Though he declined a formal military alliance with Sitting Bull, he later sheltered Sioux refugees while balancing Blackfoot survival amid disappearing buffalo herds. Crowfoot maintained familial responsibilities and adopted captives when needed. His funeral drew hundreds of tribe members and government representatives, reflecting his stature as a national leader. He died of tuberculosis on April 25, 1890, at Blackfoot Crossing, Alberta. John Ross, October 3, 1790 to August 1, 1866. John Ross, born October 3, 1790 in the Cherokee Nation in the area of present-day Alabama, served as principal chief from 1828 to 1866. Raised in bicultural surroundings, and educated among acculturated Cherokees, he spoke English fluently and became the nation's leading diplomat and legal advocate. He led delegations to Washington, petitioned Congress, and opposed the 1835 Treaty of New Echota, which a minority signed without National Council approval. Federal enforcement nevertheless produced the Trail of Tears, an enforced removal that cost many lives and precipitated internal reprisals. During the Civil War, Ross sought neutrality, but under mounting pressure, signed a conditional treaty with the Confederacy and endured exile. After the war, he negotiated with Union authorities to defend Cherokee interests and to rebuild unified governance. He died in Washington, D.C. on August 1, 1866. He is remembered as a determined advocate for Cherokee sovereignty and legal rights. Charles Eastman, February 19, 1858 to January 8, 1939. Charles Eastman, born February 19, 1858, near Redwood Falls, Minnesota, was a Dakota physician, writer, and social reformer. Known as Ohiesa, he survived the U.S.-Dakota War of 1862, spent part of his youth in Canada, and later lived with his father in Dakota Territory, adopting Western education. He graduated from Dartmouth College in 1887 and earned a medical degree from Boston University in 1890, becoming one of the first Native American physicians trained in Western medicine. Eastman served at Pine Ridge Reservation, treating wounded knee survivors, then turned to writing and advocacy. His memoir, Indian Boyhood, gained wide readership, and he lectured extensively on Native rights. In 1911, he co-founded the Society of American Indians, advised the Boy Scouts, and ran a summer camp in New Hampshire. He continued publishing, including From the Deep Woods to Civilization, and eventually withdrew from public life, spending his later years with his son in Detroit, Michigan, where he died on January 8, 1939. Sarah Winnemucca, circa 1844, October 16, 1891. Sarah Winnemucca, born circa 1844 in Humboldt-Sink, Mexico, now Nevada, was a Northern Paiute educator, lecturer, tribal leader, and writer, best known for her 1883 book, Life Among the Putes: Their Wrongs and Claims. Granddaughter of Truckee and daughter of Winnemucca, both Paiute chiefs, she spent part of her childhood in California, learning Spanish and English, and later adopted the name Sarah. She served as an interpreter at Camp McDermott, 1868 to 1871, and aided her tribe during the Bannock War of 1878, scouting Bannock territory and rescuing her father. Winnemucca lectured widely on her people's plight, securing presidential attention and public support, though many promises were never fulfilled. She taught Native children, married Army officer L.H. Hopkins in 1881, and toured the eastern U.S. to advocate for her tribe. After her husband's death in 1886, she moved to a sister's home in Monada, Montana, where she died on October 16, 1891. Iron Tail, circa 1842, May 28, 1916. Iron Tail, born around 1842, was an Oglala Lakota chief and celebrated performer with Buffalo Bill's Wild West, internationally famous and immortalized on the Buffalo nickel issued from 1913 to 1938. Known for his dignity, wisdom, and diplomacy rather than warfare, he traveled with Buffalo Bill across Europe and the U.S., appearing in Paris and Rome, and became a subject for prominent photographers such as Gertrude Casebier. Iron Tail maintained close friendships with Buffalo Bill and fellow Lakota, enjoyed children and horses, and was respected for his quiet counsel. In May 1916, while performing with the Miller Brothers' 101 Ranch Wild West in Philadelphia, he became ill with pneumonia and died aboard a train on May 28, 1916. His body was later returned to Pine Ridge Indian Reservation and buried at Holy Rosary Mission Cemetery on June 3, 1916, commemorated with a granite stone featuring the buffalo nickel for which he had posed, as Buffalo Bill had intended. Plenty Coups, circa 1848 to 1932. Plenty Coups was born about 1848 at the cliffs that have no name, in the country now identified near Billings, Montana, and served as principal chief of the Crow Nation, guiding his people through the upheavals of the late 19th and early 20th centuries. As a youth, he earned renown as a warrior, taking numerous coups and demonstrating courage that secured his name, Alaxchia Ahu, many achievements. Early prophetic visions convinced him that non-native peoples would ultimately claim the plains. Interpreting this as a mandate for survival, he pursued accommodation, legal advocacy, and education rather than warfare. Elevated to chief in his 20s, he led delegations to Washington to defend Crow land rights, negotiated concessions that preserved much of their homeland, and promoted schooling and cultural continuity. Celebrated for his foresight, he represented his people at national ceremonies, including the 1921 dedication of the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. He died at Crow Agency, Montana, in 1932. 2 Moons, circa 1847 to 1917. 2 Moons, born circa 1847 in what is now Montana, was a Northern Cheyenne chief who fought in the key campaigns of 1876 to 77 and later led his people through the reservation era. The son of Carries the Otter, he saw action at the Battle of the Rosebud, at Little Bighorn on June 25, 1876, and at Wolf Mountain in January 1877, where defeat by General Nelson A. Miles led to his band's surrender at Fort Keogh. After surrender, he served as an Indian scout under Miles and was appointed head chief of the Northern Cheyenne Reservation. In later decades, he represented his people in Washington, meeting President Woodrow Wilson in 1914 to press for better reservation conditions. 2 Moons was also one of the facial models James Earl Fraser used for the buffalo nickel. He died in 1917 at his home on the Northern Cheyenne Reservation near Busby, Montana, and is buried alongside U.S. Route 212. Gall, circa 1840 to 1894. Gall, born circa 1840 near the Moreau River in present-day South Dakota, was a Hunkpapa Sioux war chief and one of the principal military leaders at the Battle of the Little Bighorn on June 25, 1876. Orphaned in childhood and adopted by Sitting Bull, he developed a reputation for tactical acumen and decisive command in numerous clashes with United States forces and encroaching settlers. At Little Bighorn, Gall is credited with rallying warriors after an initial setback and helping to draw Lieutenant Colonel George A. Custer into a tactically unsound position that contributed to the destruction of the 7th Cavalry. Following the campaign, he joined Sitting Bull in exile in Canada, but scarcity and the absence of a reservation compelled him to surrender around 1880. On the Sioux reservations, Gall increasingly urged accommodation and adaptation to new conditions, and he accepted terms that divided the Great Sioux Reservation. He died near Oak Creek, South Dakota, in 1894. Standing Bear, circa 1829 to 1908. Standing Bear, born circa 1829 near present-day Niobrara, Nebraska, was a Ponca chief and advocate for Native American legal rights. Raised on ancestral lands at the Niobrara-Missouri confluence, he assumed leadership young and witnessed treaty losses that eroded Ponca territory. In 1877, federal agents removed the Ponca to Indian territory. Standing Bear and several chiefs walked back to Nebraska to bury loved ones and were arrested at Fort Omaha. Represented by John Webster and Andrew Poppleton, he brought a habeas corpus action culminating in Judge Elmer S. Dundy's May 12, 1879, ruling that Native Americans are persons under U.S. law and entitled to habeas corpus and basic protections. The decision won the Ponca's release and helped secure restitution of land in 1881. Standing Bear toured eastern cities to publicize their plight, then returned to live on his homeland near the Niobrara, where he continued to counsel his community until his death in 1908. Kicking Bear, circa 1846 to 28th May, 1904. Kicking Bear, born about 1846 near Pine Ridge in present-day southwestern South Dakota, was a Lakota spiritual leader and a principal proponent of the 1890 Ghost Dance. A nephew of Sitting Bull and cousin of Crazy Horse, he became a Miniconjou chief by marriage and fought U.S. forces during the Black Hills War, including at the Battle of the Little Bighorn. In 1889, he and Short Bull traveled to Nevada to learn Wovoka's Ghost Dance, and, at Sitting Bull's request, demonstrated the rite at Standing Rock. Authorities, alarmed by the movement, suppressed the ceremonies. Tensions culminated in the Wounded Knee Massacre of December 1890, and Kicking Bear and other Ghost Dance leaders were arrested and briefly imprisoned. He accepted a government offer to perform with Buffalo Bill's Wild West, but left in protest and was returned to custody before his 1892 release. In 1896, he joined a delegation to Washington, D.C. to press Native grievances. He died on May 28, 1904. Yellow Wolf, circa 1855, August 1935. Yellow Wolf, born about 1855, was a Nez Perce warrior who fought in the Nez Perce War of 1877 and later became a key chronicler of his people's experiences. Known also as He-Mene-Mox Mox and Hein-Mot Hai-Hai, he joined the flight toward Canada in his early 20s and participated in the battles that followed. He emphasized that the war was forced upon the Nez Perce through broken treaties, threats, and settler violence, and that many bands had not agreed to the treaties imposed by the U.S. government. From 1907 until his death, Yellow Wolf collaborated with Lucullus Virgil McWhorter to record his story, intending it to educate future generations about the Nez Perce perspective and the injustices they endured. He spoke openly about his people's traditions, spirituality, and naming practices, sharing how a vision of a yellow wolf at age 13 gave him strength as a warrior. Living on the Colville Reservation, he married twice and had several children, though only his son Billy survived him. Yellow Wolf died in August 1935, leaving a legacy as both a warrior and a peacemaker who preserved his people's history. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Your support truly motivates me to keep creating content.